Why Andean DNA tells a different story of the Inca. What if the most powerful empire in South America left no written history, yet its story is still trapped in the bones of its people? You're standing in the heart of the Andes, where a people once ruled everything their eyes could see, without ever writing a single word. Tawantinsuyu, the Inca Empire, was the largest in the Americas before Columbus. By 1532, it stretched from the snowfields of Ecuador to the valleys of central Chile, 2,400 miles, ruling over 12 million people across 2 million square kilometers, all in less than a century. But when the Spaniards came, the paper trail was missing. No books, no scrolls, just quipus, knotted strings, still undeciphered to this day, just oral myths, shaped by politics, not truth, and just fragments of stone and ash where temples once stood. They didn't just conquer an empire, they burned its memory. The royal mummies, embalmed symbols of divine rule, were paraded in public festivals, consulted for decisions, preserved for generations. Gone. The quipus, potentially holding entire histories, rituals, even names labelled heresy. Burned. In place of records, we got the words of the conquistadors, chroniclers who rebranded myth as fact and erased what didn't fit. Their version became history, and for 5 centuries we believed it. But now, science is challenging it. Thanks to ancient DNA sequencing, the Inca have started to speak again. Not through stories, but through genomes. From burials at Machu Picchu, to mummified children on Andean peaks, to modern families in Cusco claiming imperial descent, every fragment of Inca blood carries an encrypted narrative. One we're only just starting to decode. And the first thing this molecular evidence reveals is a contradiction so deep, so fundamental, it rewrites the empire's origin itself. Because in the DNA of the Inca, there isn't one founder. There are two lineages, 2 myths, one empire built on something far messier than legend ever allowed. And what that DNA reveals first is a contradiction the chronicles could never explain. If the Inca were born from divine blood, why does their DNA reveal 2 fathers? Because hidden inside the bones of those who called themselves royals was not unity, but division. Not one sacred origin, but 2 competing beginnings, both claiming to be the true heartbeat of an empire. The contradiction starts in myth. On one side, the story sung in temples near Lake Titicaca. The god Inti sends his children, Manco Capac and Mama Oclo, to bring light to a dark world. They rise from the lake, carrying a golden staff, planting it in the valley that would become Cusco. It's divine, ordered, unquestionable. But just a few miles away, another origin tale survives. The Aya brothers, born not of gods, but of caves and conflict. Siblings cursed, transformed, betrayed. Aya Kachi locked, underground. Aya Uchu turned to stone. Aya Manco, the only one left standing. 2 myths. For centuries, historians called them legends. But in 2022, a genetic study cracked open something no myth ever dared say out loud. Researchers tested 18 men from 12 noble families in Cusco, each tracing lineage to Inca emperors. But genetically, they didn't share one ancestral line. They split, cleanly, into 2. A WKI-1, rooted in the highlands near Titicaca, matches rulers, like Yahuahuacac and the Aymara peoples. A WKI-2, linked to Huayna Capac, father of Atahualpa, surges into power during the late intermediate period, around 1000 to 1450 CE. This isn't just a family drama, it's political reality, 2 bloodlines, 1 throne. An empire built not on shared ancestry but managed rivalry. Both lines claim divine right, Only one would face the Spanish in 1532. But if the Inca throne was forged from rival bloodlines, who really ruled the empire's heart? What if the most sacred Inca city wasn't a royal sanctuary, but a laboratory of cultural control? Maybe it wasn't the kings who ruled it at all. Maybe the heart of the empire wasn't even royal. Because when scientists sequenced the dead of Machu Picchu, they didn't find nobles. They found strangers, and not just one or two. 34 individuals buried in the sacred city of the sun. And none of them shed blood. Not with each other. Not with the royal line. Not even with Cusco itself. This wasn't a royal estate. It was a genetic mosaic, a curated display of empire-wide assimilation, a city where identity was engineered, not inherited. In 2023, a revolutionary study published in Science Advances flipped our understanding of Machu Picchu on its head. Using ancient genome sequencing, researchers revealed that many of the individuals buried there came from across the Andes and beyond, the Peruvian coast, Ecuador, Colombia, Paraguay, the Amazon basin. They were not elites. They were Yanacuna, imperial retainers. They were Aklakona, chosen women, taken from childhood to serve state rituals. This was not a palace. This was policy. A reflection of the Mitmakuna system, where entire communities were uprooted, relocated, remixed. Loyalty wasn't born, it was manufactured. Some of the women buried at Machu Picchu carried nearly 100% Amazonian ancestry, groups that Spanish records wouldn't even recognize for decades. Yet their bodies lay under Inca stone in the shadow of sacred mountains long before ink ever told their story. This isn't just diversity, it's deliberate, it's controlled, it's silent power, expressed through DNA, not decree. Because while the Spanish thought they conquered a centralized empire, they never saw how deeply the Inca had already fractured identity itself. So if the empire's most sacred site was a genetic crossroads, where else had the Inca remixed identity in silence? How do you control 12 million people across 2 million square kilometers? You move them one by one. They remixed it everywhere. From the salt mines of Maras to the cloud forests of Vilcabamba, no community was too remote, no bloodline too sacred. Because for the Inca, power wasn't projected through armies. It was embedded, one body at a time. Through a policy called Mitmakuna, the empire uprooted entire populations, moving them like living chess pieces. Groups from the Peruvian coast, the Amazon and the highlands were resettled into foreign provinces, not as invaders, but as strangers. This wasn't colonization, it was identity engineering, a system built not to erase resistance, but to dissolve it, quietly. Historical records describe the Yanacuna, men taken from conquered regions to serve the state directly. Some became messengers, some administrators, others temple servants. Their loyalty wasn't inherited, it was demanded. Even more striking were the Aklakona, young girls selected as tributes, removed from their kin, trained in the art of weaving, ritual, even marriage. Some served priests, others became offerings, but none went as families. DNA proves it. They were moved alone, deliberately severed from kin networks that might pull them back to their origins. The 2023 DNA analysis of Machu Picchu's 34 individuals reveals this pattern with chilling clarity. No shared kinship. No extended families. Just genetic roots leading back to distant corners of the empire. Coastal Lima, the eastern slopes of the Andes, tropical Ecuador. Scattered origins converging in one controlled space. This wasn't cultural unity, it was a biopolitical design. A living map of the empire, engineered not through force, but through the bloodstream. But in every system, there are outliers, communities that refused, bloodlines that stayed hidden, unmixed, waiting. But even as the empire reshaped others, some refused to be reshaped, and their DNA survived to prove it. Spanish records say they vanished. DNA says they resisted. So who's telling the truth? One of those survivors lived in the clouds. High above the Amazon, where the jungle meets the Andes, stood a people the Inca feared more than most. The Chachapoyas, also known as the Cloud Warriors. Tall, fair-skinned and fiercely independent, they controlled the high ridges of northeastern Peru long before Inca expansion began. By the late 1400s, the Inca had invaded, absorbing their territory into the imperial machine. Spanish chroniclers claimed the Chachapoyas were conquered and dispersed, thousands, broken into pieces, relocated across the empire. Another rebellious tribe erased, another victory written in stone. But stone can lie. DNA doesn't. A groundbreaking genetic study published in 2019 tested modern populations in the Amazonas region, direct descendants of Chachapoya territory. What they found shocked historians. Despite 500 years of conquest, relocation, and empire, the Chachapoyas still carried a unique Native American genetic signature. Not blended, not erased, not broken. Their mitochondrial DNA, inherited through the maternal line, was distinct from the highland groups of Cusco or Titicaca. Their YSTR profiles passed through the father line also showed isolation, no trace of mixing with Inca elites. Even their language, Quechua, was not inherited. It was adopted, a political survival tool. Their genes told one story, their tongue told another. And in that contradiction lay their rebellion. They had survived the greatest assimilation machine in South America by resisting not through war but through biological memory, because the empire could move their bodies. But it couldn't rewrite their blood. But while some tribes resisted conquest, others disappeared so completely they survive only in one child's frozen body. In 1985, archaeologists found a child buried in ice. His DNA led to a people we can no longer find. He was 7 years old, wrapped in feathers, placed on a mountain over 22,000 feet high. Cerro Aconcagua, near the edge of the sky. No grave, no stone, just ice, sealing him in silence. When his body was discovered in 1985, the world called him a sacrifice. One more victim of the Inca Capacocha ritual, a ceremonial offering to gods of snow, sun and sovereignty. But what the priests couldn't know, what even the boy's own people may not have known, was what he carried inside him. A whisper from 18,000 years ago. His mitochondrial DNA didn't match any known Inca noble. It didn't match the highland elites of Cusco or Titicaca. It belonged to haplogroup C won by a ghost lineage, something ancient, something nearly lost. This same haplogroup had surfaced only 3 other times, once in a Wari mummy predating the Inca by centuries, twice in modern indigenous individuals from Peru and Bolivia. But by now, it's nearly gone. C1b is a genetic fossil, a time capsule of a people we no longer see in temples or records or towns. It speaks to a population erased by empire, by disease, by silence. Estimates suggest up to 90% of native populations vanished in the century after Spanish contact. But this boy wasn't killed by the Spanish. He died at the empire's height, as a holy offering, a child chosen by priests to honour gods by ending his story. Yet in doing so, they unknowingly preserved a world that no longer exists. This wasn't just a sacrifice. It was a burial of an entire lineage, one that now survives only in lab slides and ancient genome databases. But here's the twist. If this lost people's DNA vanished from common memory, what if it survived, not in villagers, but in the blood of emperors themselves. Can the descendants of emperors still carry the truth their ancestors buried? The mummies are gone. Burned, buried, destroyed by those who feared their power. But the bloodlines, they never truly vanished. In the highland districts of San Sebastian and San Geronimo, just outside of Cusco, families still whisper their connection to the old rulers, not through temples, through memory, through genealogy passed down like a sacred heirloom. And in 2022, science finally listened. A genetic study tested 18 individuals who claimed descent from Inca nobility. Not just any test, this was a full Y chromosome haplogroup analysis, searching for traces of imperial male lineage. And what it revealed was extraordinary. 2 distinct clusters emerged. One, named AWKY1, matched earlier rulers like Yahuahuacax and Viracocha Inca, rooted near Lake Titicaca, rich in Aymara ancestry. The other, AWKI2, was tied to the later dynasty, including Huayna Capac, father of the doomed emperor Atahualpa. 2 bloodlines, 2 dynasties, 2 mythologies, now confirmed in chromosomes. But here's where it deepens. The Y chromosome told the story of fathers and kings, but the mitochondrial DNA, passed down by mothers, was far more diverse. Not Inca, but from all corners of the empire. This wasn't purity, it was politics. A system where male Inca rulers married daughters from conquered elites. A genetic treaty, binding rebellion to blood. Each union, a new thread in the empire's web. Each child, a blend of divine right and diplomatic conquest. But even that wasn't the whole truth. Because not every seed was sown in palaces. Some were hidden in silence and left behind not in bones. But these royal unions weren't the only way the empire spread its roots. Some seeds were planted in silence and in hair. A single quipu was thought to be made by a priest. Turns out it was spun by a peasant. For centuries, quipus, those knotted cords that once held the secrets of an empire, were thought to be the tools of high priests, court officials, state record keepers, symbols of elite control. But in 2023, a single thread changed everything. Recovered from the outskirts of Pachacamac, just south of modern-day Lima, a 500-year-old quipu was sent for material analysis. And what researchers found wasn't just camelid fibre. Woven deep into its cords was human hair. Real, intact strands, preserved beneath centuries of dust and silence. A second test, stable isotope analysis, was run on the hair. The results pointed to a low-protein plant-based diet, common among agriculturalists, not nobles. This was no royal scribe. This was a commoner, a villager, someone whose name was never written down, but whose memory was literally knotted into history. This flips everything. Because if quipus weren't sacred objects made only by priests, if they could be made by peasants, by farmers, by shepherds, then power didn't just flow top down, it flowed both ways. Suddenly, the quipu isn't just a ledger of the empire, it's a decentralized archive, a tool that may have lived in huts as well as temples, in the hands of mothers, not just governors. And combined with the discovery of multi-ethnic DNA at Machu Picchu, combined with Mitmakana policies that spread people across the Andes like pieces on a board, it means the Inca state wasn't a monolith. It was a collage, a living mosaic of memory, movement and voice, threaded together by the ruled, not just the rulers. So maybe empire was never just about command. So what if the Inca Empire wasn't top-down, but bottom-up, shaped by the people it claimed to rule? What if the Inca didn't erase local cultures, but absorbed them so well that their genes never left? Imagine an empire that blooms, not by erasing the old, but by weaving it in, strand by strand, generation by generation. Researchers in 2020 made a remarkable discovery. They sequenced DNA from 89 ancient individuals whose lives spanned from 9,000 to 500 years ago across the heart of the Andes. What they found overturns how we've imagined conquest. Just 9,000 years ago, people who lived in the highlands already carried distinct genetic patterns from those along the coast. By 5,800 BP, these differences crystallized further as north-south divides emerged. Still, even when mighty civilizations like the Wari, Moche, Tiwanaku, and Inca rose and fell, the genetic blueprint of people stayed the same. This isn't conquest through mass relocation. This is empire through continuity. Even great political upheavals didn't topple genetic landscapes. Local populations remained anchored, culturally resilient, genetically consistent, despite centuries of change. The case of Tiwanaku confirms it. In its heart, people of diverse ancestries coexisted, yet most offerings buried on the Acapana platform carried pure Titicaca Basin DNA. This wasn't assimilation, this was localized, holding steady beneath layers of power, and it didn't stop in the past. Modern Andean communities, especially from the highlands and coast, mirror this ancient stability. They hold the same genetic signatures carried by their ancestors thousands of years ago, a living testament to identity that empire could not dissolve. But if so much survived beneath the surface, what else is still hidden in plain sight, waiting for DNA to reveal? What if the key to the Inca's real story was never lost, but simply never read the right way? What if the answer wasn't buried in a tomb or hidden in blood, but dangling silently in thread? Because the Inca's most secret archive might not be in ruins, it might be in knots. For 500 years, quippers were dismissed as accounting tools, silent math from a vanished world. But then, one of them whispered back. It wasn't found in a royal palace, it was uncovered in a coastal storage hut, in a dusty archive of everyday life. And it didn't just contain alpaca fibres, it held strands of human hair. In 2022, isotope analysis revealed something astonishing. The hair belonged to someone with a low-protein, mostly plant-based diet, the kind eaten by common farmers, not nobles. This wasn't the work of a high priest, it was the voice of a villager. That discovery shattered everything. Suddenly, quippers weren't exclusive to the elite. They may have been part of local memory systems, witnessed, maintained, and encoded by the people themselves. And if that's true, then those knots might carry more than numbers. They might carry names, lineages, geographic origins. Much like DNA strands encode human ancestry, these fibres may encode cultural ancestry. Some researchers now believe quippers may have functioned like visual family trees, capturing the flow of marriage, migration, and inheritance without ever writing a word. One twist, one turn, one strand of hair. That's all it took to open this possibility. The humble object once seen as a calculator might be a genetic manuscript, threaded with the voices of people never recorded in ink. And if quippers can reveal forgotten bloodlines, could one of them lead to a hidden royal that history erased? What if the most powerful empire in South America never truly ended, because its story was never truly told? That's the question gripping every lab, every excavation, every strand of ancient DNA. Because the more we decode, the less finished the Inca story feels. It's not over, it's waking up. In 1985, archaeologists stood breathless before the frozen body of a sacrificed child. In 2022, researchers unravelled hair from a forgotten quipu. And in Cusco, descendants of emperors still walk ancient streets, unaware their blood is being read like a manuscript. Every year, more ancient remains are sequenced, not to build a museum, but to rewrite a memory shattered by disease, fire, conquest, yet still alive in Y chromosomes, in mitochondrial strands, in the silent DNA of bones buried high in the Andes. The Inca weren't erased, they were rerouted. Genetic continuity in the Andes isn't just survival, it's defiance. From the cloud warriors of Chachapoyas to the descendants of AWKI1 and AWKI2 to the haplogroup C1 by frozen atop Aconcagua, the Inca legacy didn't dissolve. It scattered. And scattered things leave trails that science is now following. Past biased chronicles, past burned libraries, past the false belief that we ever fully understood this empire. Because history, written in ink, is fragile, but history, written in blood, that survives. Every new genome decoded, every burial uncovered, every sacred object re-examined with 21st century eyes, shifts the story a little more. The Inca are speaking again, not in Quechua, but in code, in carbon, in silence turned data. So as new remains are tested and lost languages revisited, one question grows louder. What else have we misunderstood about the Inca world? And whose story are we still waiting to uncover?